This is recorded, by the way. And let me just move things around.
What deck are you using today?
So I am using a new deck that I just recently got called the Radiant Wilds deck. And I've really just been starting to get to know the deck this past week. And it's been really interesting. It's an incredibly vibrant deck.
Yeah, how beautiful.
I was drawn to this deck because in large part its use of really bold oranges and pinks, which are like a really kind of 70s vibe that I love, or 60s or 70s, but it doesn't feel 60s or 70s at all. It's very contemporary. It's also very grounded in the desert, and I love the desert. I have a place out in the desert as well. So yeah, we'll see kind of where it leads us.
So pretty. It's awesome.
Well, I guess let's officially start. I'm just going to say a quick hello and thank you to everyone for joining today. Special thank you to James and Trish for creating this very special event. I'm not sure what else I can say. Like, I'm very proud and happy that James took this initiative. He's a diligent tarot quester, like as much as I am, and it's always super cool, when people, and I mean, since you're all here too, if you have anything you want to propose to me and do on this platform, I'm up for absolutely everything. So congratulations, James, for doing this, the first of which I hope was going to be a whole series, and maybe what will break your your how can I say that,
Anxiety.
yeah, exactly, yeah. A tarot superstar. I think it's such a smart idea. So anyway, please give a warm welcome to both of our guests and hosts today, and I'm gonna vanish in the background, but I'm around, and I'm super excited to hear all this tarot prompted stories.
Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you.
So I know you've all read the little introduction or bios on both Trish and I, but I'll just set our relationship up a little bit, how we know each other. So you guys all know I work as a film publicist in production, and I met Trish late last summer, as we were tech scouting for a film that she shot at the end of last year. And so I was a unit publicist on a movie called Sitting in Bars with Cake, that Trish directed, and which is going to be coming out sometime this year. I don't know exactly when. We're coming out theatrically and then on Amazon, correct?
I haven't heard anything about the rollout. You probably know more about it than I do. It will definitely be on
that was
Amazon.
my understanding.
Yeah, it will definitely be on Amazon for sure. I don't know if it's going to have a theatrical run as well, but we'll see.
Well, regardless, you'll be able to see it on Amazon. It was shot for Amazon, and it's an incredible story. But that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily today. It was in working on the film, however, that Trish is just a very open, easy to talk to, easy to get along with person, which is not something I encounter all the time with directors. It's kind of a rare quality. And I really felt attracted to Trish. I have those glasses in amber. Um, and then I discovered, or we discovered, that she also reads tarot and is a tarot collector as well. And we bonded over that too. Do you want to talk a little bit about your tarot, like how you think of tarot, how you approach tarot, how you came to tarot?
Sure. I um I guess I've always loved the cards and found them very beautiful and very mysterious, all as far back as like my teen years, I would say, but never, I always thought you had to have some kind of magic to be able to read them. And I guess in some sense we all do have magic, but also there's just anybody can pick up a deck and start doing it and can teach themselves or learn from people. And so at a very dark time in my life, I needed guidance, and I wasn't really trusting humans at that moment to give me guidance. And I'm not a particularly religious person. So having grown up Roman Catholic and been steeped in all of that stuff, I had kind of turned away from organized religion, but I knew I wanted some like bigger answers from somewhere beyond myself and the realm of human beings and their limitations. So I just kind of like picked up actually a friend of mine was at my house for New Year's Eve, and she did readings for all of us, and she'd been taking a class, and I just was like, yep, I'm doing this, I'm going. And I got myself I know you're maybe supposed to be gifted your first deck, some people say. No, I went out and I got my first deck. I got the Smith-Waite deck on the advice of the witch at the shop. And I got every book I could find. And then I found myself a teacher and studied with him. And then I took a bunch of other classes because I really liked, despite what I just said about human beings, I really liked having a human walk me through the ways to look at the cards. And I also just took every single course I could find, read every single book I could find, became a complete hoarder of decks. Yeah, that's about it. It's probably been, I'm gonna say like 12 years, maybe 15 years since I've been reading. And yeah, I find it really calming. I sometimes read for other people. I have a friend that I read for every single day. But I mostly just read for myself and my family. I'll read it for anyone who asks generally, but I don't do it as a business or anything. I just like to do it. I love my deck. It's like a good friend.
And you typically read from or now you're reading from the Mystical Moments deck, is that correct?
Yeah, that's my go-to deck right now and has been for probably 2 years, but I do have sort of a rotating, my very favorite decks of all, I keep in like boxes around my room. And you know how decks are, like they have different personalities depending on the questions that you're asking or the things you need guidance on or the people you're reading for. Some decks are better than others. So I do swap them in and out, but that's my day-to-day deck.
Do you have, so I'm going to ask just a couple of other questions and then I'll start pulling cards, but do you have, like, what are some of your favorite decks that come to mind?
Some of I still love my old Smith-Waite deck. It's like putting on old jeans. I know it's dated and it's not particularly politically correct, but I find like if I really need a straight answer, just it's so familiar to me. I do love the Slow Tarot, which is a deck by Lacey Bryant. It's a really beautiful deck. I love the Triomphe de la Luna, which is by the same dude, Patrick Valenza, who did Deviant Moon. I love that deck. It's a little bit macabre and grotesque, and it's kind of rude, which I like about that. I love Tarot of the Abyss. It's a black and white deck, really, really, really pretty art. Anna Torian, I think her name is, designed that one. I love Dusk to Onyx. It's a melanated deck, really beautiful, like an art piece. I mean, these all are really. I think those are like my favorites. Yeah, those are sort of the ones that are sit in the boxes in my room. And also Shadowscapes Tarot, which there's a Czech version that has bigger cards. I don't know if anybody is aware of that. You can buy it from a website in Prague and they'll send it to you, and the cards are bigger, so the detail is easier to see. And I think they're like gilded edges. They're really pretty. So I don't find that one gives me such great readings because it's just so dreamy and so pretty. It's almost too pretty. But I do keep that one around too.
Cool. I see a question from Michaeline in the chat, but I want to kind of save the questions a little bit towards the end. But we'll answer that, Michaeline. And the short answer for me is yes, but yeah. And the other question I want to ask you before I start pulling cards, if you feel comfortable, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when we were on set one day, you explained how you shuffle and cut cards, and it was the most incredible process that I had heard, and I always wanted to do it, and I forgot like how to. Can you explain to us how it is that you approach shuffling and cutting?
Yeah, this is how I've developed it. Nobody's taught me this. I did this sheerly as a way to escape my own overthinking of like, when have I shuffled enough? When have I shuffled enough? Does the deck want to be in this position? Like and I can get really into like, and so I've just developed this sort of foolproof system for myself. I think of a number, first of all, usually between 1 and 10, but I can go higher sometimes, that I feel like represents the sort of state of affairs that we're trying to address. So like if it's a relationship, it might be a 2 or maybe a 3. You know, if it's a real, like one of those growth moments in your life and you feel just really uncomfortable and you need help getting through like maybe a 5, you know, so I use numerology a little bit and then I come up with my number, say it's going to be a 3. I do 3 like of this kind of, go through the deck with 3 of these. I forget what these are called, you know, this kind of shuffling. And then, so the number of times, and then from the bottom of the deck with my left hand, I deal the deck into 3 piles, and it, you know, one around and around and around. If I'm doing a 5, I do a pentacle, which is it's almost always 5s because that's when we go to our deck when we're feeling 5-y. So I'll do a little pentacle shape, all the way through the deck, and that gives me confidence that none of my cards stuck together from the last time I read. Everybody got separated, but then I feel like that's too mathematical for my deck to have spoken to me. So then I do like a leapfrog cuts where I'll cut and then, sorry, I'm going to try to.
So wait, do you pull them when you separate it into the various piles? Then do you pull it back together?
Yeah.
One?
And in that sense, I let my intuition tell me where, like, do I follow the pentacle again, or do I just restack them, or do I just mush them all together? That I do let my just intuition tell me. And then in order for my deck to put cards where they need to be, I do this leapfrog cut where I'll do, you know, cut once, cut again, and I go right to left. And then you pick them up from right to left. So I do that this number of times as whatever number I have determined, 5 or whatever. And then I don't touch them. I'm like, we're done. No more shuffling, no more cutting. And that's, I mean, if I'm going to cut, depending on then how I'm going to read, I might have to cut one more time to get to the card I'm looking for, or the card I'm asking for, but I don't shuffle anymore. And I don't, you know, yeah. It's complicated.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But you know, going through that and knowing that there's just there's a system for me, which I'm a really system-y person. It just helps me like get out of my head, it's sort of like a meditative process.
I love that. All right. Well, I have shuffled my cards and I am going to leapfrog from left to right and 3 times.
Do right to left. Go from your right brain to your left brain.
Okay.
I mean, from your left brain to your right brain. Left brain to right brain, which of course is like opposite in our visual field.
Wait, no, I did that. Wait, okay, I'm gonna shuffle again real quick. Sorry. I started to change.
I'm also like obsessed with psychology and our divided brains and which is on the right.
Left to right.
Yeah.
Okay. that's the way I do it. I just misspoke. So, okay, I've got them shuffled.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull the first card, and what a beautiful card. I have pulled the sun, and the sun in this deck is a really gorgeous card that lives interestingly. There's a lot of cosmos in this deck, and I don't think of the sun as having this kind of darkness in it as a card, but it doesn't feel like a dark card, but it's up there in the in space rather than in our blue sky. I love this woman who's standing there staring at it in that sort of Oscar style dress, like she's on a
Very
red
glamorous.
carpet.
Yeah.
Very glamorous. And I kind of want to know, like, what's your happy place? Like, where do you find your sun?
I think outside, like in the actual sun, although I also really like rain, but I like to be outside. That's my happy place, and preferably without a lot of human intervention. I do like humans. I've come back around on humans. Spoiler alert, I didn't stay dating everybody, but I do like to get out in the forest or on a mountain.
That's cool. It's funny too, because my follow-up question was going to be, do you prefer to go outside on a sunny day, or do you prefer being inside on a rainy day? And you answered that without me having to ask.
Go outside on a rainy day. Yeah, that's probably my favorite.
Outside on a rainy day.
Probably, yeah. Or like at least misty and kind of moody. Yeah.
You've been loving this winter then, right?
Oh, it's been really, really good for me.
In
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. We've gone from the sun to the moon.
Oh, there we go.
Which makes sense. There's a progression of the day here. And the moon is our gateway to dreams and dreamland. And I love the attitude of this character in this moon card, although I'm still trying to figure out like what they're doing, the Michael Jackson, crotch clutch there, what that's all about. But I'm kind of curious to know with this card, what's the last dream that you had? Do you dream? Do you remember your dreams?
I do generally remember quite a few dreams. And especially if I ask myself to remember them, I'm better at it. I've tried intermittently to keep like a dream journal, and I'll stick with it for like a few days or a few weeks, and then I'll fall off the wagon. But I did just have a dream last night that I kept smelling shit. Sorry if I'm not allowed to curse. I apologize. Kept smelling poo in my garage, and my garage is not really a garage. We use it like we have our chickens live in there at night, and it's kind of like just a weird farm barn, and it kept just smelling like poo, and not the way chickens naturally smell. It smelled like dog poo, and it turned out in my dream that we discovered this like big pile of poo in the back corner, and we were like, oh man, who's been in here pooing? And then while I'm trying to figure out how we're going to clean it up, and I was trying to find gloves and whatever to pick up this poo, we didn't know whose it was. We're trying to determine what species it was. Then my husband calls from the other back corner. Oh, it's worse. It gets worse. There's a geyser of sewage. So we discovered like a river of sewage running through our garage. And I just remember thinking like, wow, my day started out one way, got completely disgusting, and then got even more disgusting. And now I'm going to have to uproot my whole life to fix it. So yeah, that was a pretty terrible dream. That was last night.
That is a terrible dream. And
yeah. I dream about poo a lot. It's
really?
Yeah.
Have you ever done what do they call it when you are self-conscious about your dreaming and you guide it? There's a term.
Oh, like
for
lucid
that.
dreaming?
Lucid dreaming. Do you ever do lucid dreaming? Because while you were telling me the dream, I pulled another card and I pulled the 8 of Cups, and I'm thinking maybe you should walk away from the poo dreams.
Walk away from all my poo. It's time. Those are no longer serving you, Trish. Yeah, I'm sure. And also I think, I mean, I think poo dreams, depending of course on how they show up, are often about needing to get rid of something to begin with. And like whether, you know, it's you having to poo really badly, you've got to release something, or, you know, you're dealing with stuff around you that it isn't doing you any good. I feel like the 8 of Cups is that's basically that card. That card is a poo dream in a way. Like, turn around. Something's not working. Go in a
walk
different
away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Martha made an interesting observation about the riches of Pluto in the underworld. In respect to your poo dreams.
I like Martha's interpretation. Oh, by the way, Martha, the Rude deck was the Triomphe de la Luna. A guy named Patrick Valenza, who did Deviant Moon, also created that deck. We can put it in the chat. Yeah, I think it is creative to dream about poo. Thanks. I mean, dark and Pluto-y and full of damage and transformation, but also like poo is something that has to be composted and it's a necessary part of life. I'm going to write this deck in here.
Am
I grossing everyone out? Sorry.
No, I just think I'm going to forever think of you as the high priestess of poo.
Ha! I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll definitely take that title.
Oh.
We don't have to get scatological, sorry. And also
Yeah,
Gen C. It's true. Poo is fertilizer. Everything.
Oh,
I mean, like, it's interesting that we pulled the sun and the moon, you did right off the bat, the dark and the light of everything. Let's face it. Like there, you know, nothing is just good or just bad.
No, absolutely not.
Including
Including poo. Yeah, there's so many bad places I can go with that I just don't want to.
All right, we can leave the poo behind.
This is interesting because I pulled this card for myself this morning. This is the 7 of Wands from this deck. And I asked the deck this morning how it felt about being the deck that I use to read for this today. And this was the first card that I pulled. And I loved it because I feel the energy of this card, typically from the Waite-Smith deck, is it's one of achievement, but it's one of stress or strife as well, right? You've got that figure standing up on the hill looking down at whatever's happening below, instead of recognizing that they're up on the hill and maybe, you know, turning around in the other direction where people aren't waving their sticks at them. But this card, I feel like, has more positive energy. And in asking it, you know, about interpreting or prompting questions, I saw an audience. I saw an audience here in the side that isn't an audience of frustration or anger, and then just sort of like this beautiful story, conversation happening up here on the hill. How do you see that?
That is a much less chaotic 7 of Wands than we often see, which I appreciate, especially in the context. Yeah, you know, one of my early tarot teachers told me the 5s are the quiz tests and quizzes of life, and the 7s are the final exams. And there's something to be said. Yeah, there's something to be said for the 7 of Wands. I don't know if I actually agree with that now that I know a bit more than I did then, but there is something to that, which like, by the time you get to the 7 of Wands in that wandsy fiery realm, you are up on a hill. You do have some, you have made some progress. You do have some stature or something that you are at that point able to stand on. And I think that is a point when people sometimes get defensive, or sometimes people feel threatened. And it's sort of one of those times when people maybe question themselves. You know, in the ride, in the Smith-Waite, I think he's the figure on that hill has 2 different shoes on. And it's sort of like this, it's like, yeah, but do you have your stuff together? You're up there defending your, you know, thing or whatever. Do you and so I think this is a nicer way of sort of saying, like, once you're there, there's going to be a lot of people reaching for you, or trying to tell you something, or trying to say something, or trying to get a word in edgewise, or trying to be seen. And how are you going to handle it? Like, how are you going to stay true to what you did to get to this place in the first place? You know, I do think it's maybe not a final exam, but a test of some type. Like, you know, it's not an easy moment, but it's a what are you made of moment, I think.
It's the year of the Chariot.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think that this is a really interesting card in the context of, I'm curious about sort of like how you feel the year of the Chariot in your life as a card for this year. But I also, like, I see this as, I want to know kind of like, when you feel in this business that we work in Hollywood, I feel like this is particularly apropos to you as a director or a filmmaker or somebody who's trying to get things done, standing in that chariot with these 2 sphinxes of stone in the road that you're trying to direct that aren't really necessarily moving you forward. And I'm curious with that, how that feels to you as a in your profession, in this town particularly.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about the Chariot card. I find it one of the more difficult ones to understand. It has not often made sense to me that it's a card ruled by Cancer, which doesn't seem to make sense until you really start really thinking about what those conundrums, what seem to me like conundrums, right, might mean. This deck that I love, the Mystical Moments, the Chariot is a snail. And she's like, she's in a chariot behind a snail. And that has helped me, and that's part of one of the reasons I love this deck. It's helped me sort of understand the sort of Cancer-y nature of Chariot and of those stone sphinxes, or, you know, in the Smith-Waite deck, those square wheels where you're like, we're not going anywhere. We think we are, and we're like, hurrah, go snail, but like we're creeping along. And I've also, you know, early on was taught like, oh, this is look how the charioteer is guiding his chariot with his mind alone. He has no hands on the reins. It's all about willpower and all this stuff, but that doesn't feel real helpful to me a lot of the time. So I've come to see that card very much as asking myself where I really do want to go, and whether it's me that's going to get there, or some form of more going with the flow. Like, a lot of times I get that card when I'm not going with the flow, and I'm not a real go with the flow person by nature. So it's really been an active choice to sort of, I know in Taoism, I think it's Taoism, they refer to the Wu Wei, which is like sailing as opposed to rowing, and working with the forces that are bigger than you and already afoot, rather than trying to muscle your way to where you want to get. And, you know, I guess in Western culture, we could say work smarter, not harder, effortless effort, says Jen. And that's exactly it. Like, and I feel like that for me, the Chariot, especially from that Cancer-y place of like, why are you wearing this hard shell? What's that soft thing underneath you're protecting? And you're muscling your way through something that might be better achieved with softness, or with effortless effort? Are you just working too hard and not working smart? Are you trying too hard? Are you investing a lot of energy in something that no matter how hard you push, it's never going to go? Or it's going to go at the pace it wants to go, not the pace that you tell it to go. And so I don't love seeing the chariot for that reason, because when I get it, I'm always like, oh, it's right. That's why I'm doing that thing again. I'm doing that thing again where I'm trying to paddle upstream instead of just like, let's see where the current takes you, you know?
So in that way, it's helpful, I would think. It gives you that, it tells you exactly not
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, it's helpful.
And do you feel that it's particularly apropos in this industry, in
Yeah,
Hollywood?
I think we're fed a lot of crap in the world in general, but in particular in this country, and in particular in this industry of filmmaking, where like, you make it happen, you do this thing, you directed this film, and it's like, well, did you, or did you just get really lucky and surround yourself with a bunch of really talented people and try your best to create an atmosphere where magical things can happen and a certain amount of momentum and inertia and just collaboration can happen. And we're not really taught to think that way. We're taught to think that we're very much responsible for the good things that happen to us and very responsible for the good things we accomplish. And then, you know, we get angry at when it doesn't go our way. And I'm learning as I get older that that's not a useful way for me to live, especially in this business where, you know, so much is beyond your control. And if you think you're in charge of any of this, including a film set, even if you're a director, no. And what do they say now? This is a big thing. Control your side of the street or whatever. Own your side of the street. That's all you can do. Own your side of the street and protect people around you as best you can. And then, you know, don't be a charioteer who's muscling through stuff that you have no business muscling through.
I decided while we're doing this, because, you know, this is the first time I'm doing it and I'm kind of like figuring it out, that I was going to continue shuffling the cards while we're talking, because I feel like the cards are listening. I
Yeah.
always feel like the cards are listening, and they're going to come up with answers or questions that based on what we're talking about, rather than just the initial shuffle. So while you were talking about all of that, I thought it was really interesting. I pulled the Eight of Swords, and because you were kind of talking about being, in a sense, being closed in and not in control, but in fact, having to understand, like when you pull that card, that you are in control over something. Your decision as to whether or not you stay in that chariot or choose a different method of transportation. I mean, we don't have to belabor that. I just think it was interesting that the cards were listening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you to your deck. That's a really good follow-up card.
So
in this deck, by the way, and I don't know if I could find it quickly, but the Eight of Swords is a female-looking figure in a bird cage with these giant wings, like angel wings, and the cage is open on the top, but because her wings are sort of stretched out through the bars of the cage, she can't get out. And if she just were to understand, I'm assuming it's a she, that she could pull her wings in and then just step out the side of the top of the cage. But, you know, she's trying to fly. He's like, you can fly, but you know, but there's a way, there's a time and a place for flying. Put your wings in, get out of the cage from the top, which is sitting there open. You're just too busy not looking at it. And then you can fly. You'll be free. But I think that there's a timing aspect to that too. And just a sort of, I know the blindfolded Smith-Waite version of like, you know, the answer's there. You're just not seeing it. You don't want to see it, or you can't see it, or you're willfully unable to see it.
it's kind of like that finger pull game, right?
Yeah, the Chinese finger trap. It's exactly
if you stop
trying so hard.
There is a way. There is a way. So the Ace of Wands makes me want to ask you what you're working on now.
I'm
What's brewing in your
in my
world of
creative
creative?
onesie place.
Yeah.
I'm actually
Where are
writing.
you stepping to?
I'm writing my first script. I've written a short
Oh, cool.
film before, but I'm writing my first feature film. It's based on a book called Bed Bugs. That's sort of a psychological suspense, scary story. And we have it outlined, and I'm starting to write now that we locked picture on cake last week. I'm going to start writing it this week. And I'm hopefully producing it with Nick Mosseri, who produced Sitting in Bars with Cake. And then I also have a movie about an over the hill death metal band with 3 brothers trying to put the band back together in order to save their dad's house from being foreclosed upon after COVID. So I'm also trying to get that one off the ground. So I hope one of those 2 is next, but I am reading scripts and just kind of gearing up that AC energy to turn the faucet back on. Creative faucet.
Cool.
Yeah.
How long do you think it have you, when you write, so you've written some shorter things, but how long do you think it might take you to write a feature?
I'm so curious to see how long it takes, because in my, like, the arrogant part of my brain is like, oh, it's gonna take like a week or 2, and then the other parts of my brain are like, yeah, no, that's gonna be like at least a few months, and you're gonna get stuck, and you're gonna like, so I don't know. We're gonna see. I'm hoping I can get it done before there's supposed to be a strike, a writer strike. I'm hoping we get it done before June.
Cool.
We'll see.
Interesting. This is the justice
Oh,
card.
the justice card.
Yeah. Which is, I think, is interesting in this deck, being this there's a lot of duality here, but this black and white figure, which makes me think of that race in Star Trek, the black and white. Do you remember in the original Star Trek, there were these there was this race of people who were white on one side and black on the other, and as you can imagine, they were divided in their personalities, and Jim Kirk had a hard time dealing with them. But do you, like, how do you see, I mean, I kind of feel like this is a stupid question, because who sees everything in black and white? But what do you see in black and white? Do you see anything in black and white? Do you think that there is like a right way and a wrong way of doing things with certain things, and no gray in between? Or
I try pretty hard not to think in black and white, just because it's when I really stop to imagine a situation or a answer being one or the other, it's almost never possible to really honestly say something is black or something is white. So I try pretty hard not to, although I will say, I think maybe a lot of us have the feeling that it feels really good to have a solid black or white answer. And so I can get seduced by that sometimes. Political stuff that's happening.
So then how do you kind of like maintain that balance?
I think I think all we can really do is just be aware of our tendency to want black and white answers, and aware of our own brains and minds' ability to trick us into thinking we have a more solid answer than maybe exists, and to just keep questioning, and just keep our mind as open as possible to other realities or other ways to interpret a situation, other information we may not have. For a while, that friend of mine who reads with me daily, we were doing a poll every Sunday night where we would put, a lot of times when I'm reading with her, we won't like let the deck completely choose a card. We'll go find a card in the deck and see what's on either side of it. And so for an entire month, every Sunday, we would find the Emperor and the Empress and what was on either side of them. And have that 6-card spread guide us for how to stay balanced that week, our male and female energy, or our sort of creative and receptive energy, or however you wanted to see it, or, you know, but like our sort of discipline-y side and our kind of nurturing side, whatever the thing was. But I think just consciously being aware that we all have both sides to us, and every situation has two sides to us. I mean, who was it that said, like, you can't have a coin with only the head? There's always a tail. And if you shave it down, shave it, there's still going to be there until the head is gone too. So like, you know, everything has two sides. So I try just really hard to remember that. And I don't think it comes naturally. I think we're wired to want clean, tidy answers. And we're wired to have strong opinions. And we're wired to sort of stick with our tribe who reinforces those opinions. And there are some adaptive advantages to those things. That's why we're wired for it. But I think also being aware, and just being aware that we do that. Sometimes that dual thinking goes away, just being aware of it. Am I doing that thing? And like, boop, it's gone, you know, in a puff of smoke, and your mind is open again.
I love the idea of that way of pulling cards by choosing a card and then going and finding it and seeing what's on the other side of that.
It's cool.
And as Michaeline just said the same thing as I was saying that in the chat. And I'm going to do that.
It's really helpful. It's really helpful. And especially if you do like a series of them for yourself, so you start to see a progression, you know, and repeaters will come up, and it's like, God, there it is again, you know, the 5 of Swords next to the Emperor. What again, you know, 3 weeks in a row, something like that, you know. And then you can even go so far as like the left and right side of each card. One is your more intuitive, you know, big picture brain, and one is your sort of grasping thinking brain. And, you know, you can really go down the rabbit hole with that one. It's really fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love that. Yeah. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. This is the 8 of Pentacles, which is a card that I love because it shows mastery of craft, and I'm all about that. And I tend to be drawn to the Pentacles a lot, although the Swords tend to be drawn to me.
The Swords always find me too.
Always. I love this card. There's in this deck, there's this theme between spheres, but there's also a fair amount of these arches. And again, this deck is new to me, so I'm not really quite sure what the arches may signify, other than the obvious of, you know, portals or doorways.
Is she building, or she's probably working on one, right? Is she painting it? Painting,
yeah.
Right. Interesting.
So, and they're almost all painted here, and she's there, you know, working on the last one. I don't know where she's going to go. We open up the edges of the card. There's probably, you know, many more, and maybe more not painted, that she's going to be working on. But how does this speak to you in terms of where you are with your craft, your career? Your career has encompassed dance and music and choreography, as well as filmmaking, and not just filmmaking, but music video creation, short films, commercials, I believe, and feature films, and so how do you feel at this stage in your career, and what you're doing with what you've learned?
Well, in the context of that card, I think, you know, as you sort of repeat whatever you're doing, if it's painting archways, or, you know, hammering out pentacles or whatever you're doing, you have to assume that that this is doing you some good, and that they may all look similar, but they're getting you somewhere. And there's sort of keep your head down, do the work, get good at it, you know, feeling to me about that. What I like about that version of the card is that they all are similar, but different, you know, and you can almost imagine them as stepping stones that have gotten her to that one. She started with the first one, which let her get up to make that, you know, and like, there's a sort of, you know how mountain climbers like stick their carabiners or whatever they use, I don't know, in as they climb, like there's a sort of way of creating the pathway as you climb it, which I don't necessarily see in the Smith-Waite deck, you know, where he's sitting at his bench just hammering them out. And I do like this idea that the ones that came before it informed the ones to come, and they aren't all identical. So you know, I used to do commercials, and I still do sometimes, but it wasn't like the greatest feeling to be hawking, you know, fast food or canned tomatoes or like garage door clickers and, you know, making your money doing that. It was a really good form of film school, but it, you know, was like, wow, that's not like the sexiest job, and it's not the most like ethically great thing to be doing with my time. But it got me to the place where, like, you know, as you know, I worked on this movie that really was like a real heart-centered project for me, and I would never have gotten this job had I not put in the time shooting commercials for like Hardee's. And, you know, is that a way of justifying, you know, working for the man? Probably, I don't know. But, you know, I just think we don't usually parachute into the place we want to get. We step by step, pentacle by pentacle get there. And it's not always sexy. And I think there's also a trust that just doing that will get, like, again, this Wu Wei thing of, you don't have to necessarily know exactly where you're headed. Just trust that by doing the thing you know you should do next. I think it was Jung who said, just do the one next thing. That's all you have to know. And if you're in touch with your intuition enough, then the one next thing will always be the right thing. So just do the one next thing. Paint this thing. One of the decks, oh, I can't remember which deck it is that I love. It's not this one, but has the Eight of Pentacles is a person building a bridge, and they're literally building it out over this giant chasm as you know, the pentacles are the sort of bridge struts, and like, you don't know where you're going. You don't know if you're ever going to get there or whatever. And you know, you just keep building one after the next. See where it takes.
This is the Lovers
card
in this deck, which I always have a little bit of I struggle with the Lovers.
Yeah, me
card.
too.
And I struggle with it because I feel that traditionally the Lovers card being a crossroads, or like I kind of consider it, without being as harsh as Sophie's Choice, the Sophie's Choice card, right? You know, you've got these two people, you're trying to make a decision between, do I go with the one that's sexy, or do I go with the one that has my heart or financial security or whatever? But they're choices, right? And when I see cards like this in the Lovers that are a card of romance, it's a little harder for me. But I know Rue, and I know you know that you have him in your life, and so if I kind of combine those two things between the romance and the crossroads with you and Rue, it makes me wonder about, and for everybody who's here, Tricia's husband Rue owns and operates a business in Silver Lake called the King's Roost, right?
Yeah, the King's Roost.
And so he's, you know, his own independent business person as Trish guides her own career in a different area. And I'm curious how those two things work together for you guys.
I'm delighted to have a partner who's not in my industry. Both because it can be such a sordid and tacky industry, and it's much cooler to be someone who bakes bread and makes soap and candles, but also just because schedule wise and logistics, and him being able to support me and me being able to support him emotionally and just like in terms of our time and resources, it's been fabulous. And And I'm just grateful to him for being so grounded, and the fact that what he does for his work is so physical. I mean, he's baking and he makes soap and he makes candles and he teaches other people. He mills his own grains. It's just, it makes him very sort of like, a person who's sort of fully present all the time. And he did not used to be that way. We met when we were 18 and we went to college together, and he was trying to get into like finance and all kinds of gross shit like that. And he, sorry if anybody's into that. I mean, God bless finance. Like none of us would be here without it, but and so he did his stint like in corporations for a while. And it was just, I watched him shrivel into like a husk of himself. And he just finally was like, that's it, I've had it. And he left. He just left and hasn't looked back. I feel like that was about 20 years ago. And about 20 years ago. And he's just left. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I can do that, and he did. And we struggled for a while financially, and we had a lot of sleepless nights, but it ended up okay. And I'm just so glad that he does what he wants to do, because now there's none of that like corporate stressed out zombie that I knew for a few years there. He's just happy.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I want to see if anybody has any questions that they want to ask.
Or you can ask our decks. This deck gives really good answers. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like Trish just offered you guys like a 1-card reading. If anyone wants to take advantage of it.
I don't want to hijack your show. I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do.
Jen is raising her hand.
Hi. This has been great. Thank you.
Hi, Jen.
So I have a question. Nice to meet you. So my husband is in a soul-sucking corporate environment, and I'm curious as a pull card as to how to get out of that.
Yeah. All right. James, why don't you each pull a card? We'll synthesize our answers. Jen, I don't have time to do my crazy shuffle for you.
Don't worry about that.
Let my cards fly by the seat of their pants today.
I'm into it.
Okay.
I
got the strength card here.
Oh, nice. All right. I'm gonna do a quick riffle, and then I'm gonna do just like
I'll tell you what I see in my strength
leapfrog
card while he's riffling and doing his stuff. Obviously, like the surface level, Jen, is like it's gonna take some strength, probably from both of you, to just if he wants to get out and he's really committed to it. Also, maybe it's gonna take you being that sort of gentle lion tamer. Is he there yet? Like, does he know he wants out, or do you know he wants out?
We both do, yeah. It's just it's hard. I'm in New York City, so being able to live in New York City and start something new is hard.
So hard and expensive. But I think, that's where maybe like reaching into the lion's mouth, or just like putting your arms around this scary beast and being like, I'm going to do it. I might be scared, but I'm going to do it. And it might be terrifying. And I don't know what that looks like, because I don't know anything about his life or his skill set, but I think it's going to be scary. And it's going to be something that most people would look at and be like, why the fuck are you doing that? Why do you have your arms around that lion with, but if people did, like, I just always think to myself when I'm doing stuff, like if this was the obvious choice, everybody would do it. And then it wouldn't mean anything, like at some point we have to do the thing that people think is crazy.
Right. Thank you.
That's not a very specific answer. I'm sorry.
No, it is, actually. I think so.
And I've pulled the 4 of Cups. Which I think is interesting because just look at this card a little bit.
You know how I sometimes see
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's
It's-
okay. I was just trying to
Go.
figure out this card versus the Rider
Right.
Waite and
Yeah.
yeah, or the
Yeah, that's
Waite
a
Smith.
pretty that's a pretty abstract Four of Cups there.
It is, but at the same time, you know, I feel like the Four of Cups is it's it's not, I mean, it's not the Five of Cups, it's not the hangover card, right? But it's kind of like in between the celebration and the hangover, you know? And there's a decision that needs to be made when it comes to the Four of Cups. Are you going to take this thing that's being handed to you that maybe is not the best thing? And maybe that's the career that your husband's in now, you know, maybe he's already been drinking from that cup. And, or are you going to choose a different, are you going to choose a different, thing, you know, vessel to drink from, a different career? And so I feel kind of like coupled with the strength card and the way that Trish is looking at the strength card, that this reinforces that it's not going to be an easy decision, right? But there is he being presented with any decisions right now? Does he have an idea of what he wants to do?
He's switching jobs, but it's like kind of in the same field.
I think there's something, yeah,
that's very interesting.
I think there's something you don't, he doesn't see. You know how in that traditional cup, Smith, right? And you could either look at it as like that surly person who won't look at that thing and won't take it and is just being a spoiled brat, or you could look at it as like they just didn't see it, or you could look at it as like they shouldn't take it. You don't have to take everything you're offered. So I feel like one of those things is happening, right? Either he shouldn't take what's being offered, it's not the right thing for him, or there's something being offered that's not the thing he thought it was. And right? And in your deck, the way that light planet is sort of hidden behind the other two planets, and the figure standing in the prism can't see that white planet back there from where he's standing. But it looks like there's these red planets and there's all these like mathematical markings and shit happening in the foreground. And then there's this like beautiful white thing that looks like where he's supposed to get. And I don't think he can see it from where he's standing.
Right.
So I think there's some change of perspective required here. And then you'll know how to sort of pull your strength and do the scary thing that you have to do. But I think there's like a shift, or like turning your head or moving back or moving forward or looking at something that you can't see right now. That's going to give you the answer of like how to do it.
Sense. Yeah, no, that definitely resonates. Thank you very much.
Maybe look out with that new job. Like maybe that's exactly the thing, but maybe that's not.
Yeah.
Be better than expected.
Well, that's the other thing, like that there, I feel like Four of Cups is also a little bit about staying open-minded and not, you know, thinking we know all the shit we think we know.
Thank you.
Good luck. I hope it goes well. I know what it's like. I know what it's like both to have a corporate job that I don't like and to live with someone who does. It's really hard.
What was your corporate job?
Me?
Yeah.
Besides making terrible commercials, yeah, I also worked for a laser light company for a while. I worked for a chain of ballroom dance studios. That was not quite as corporate as like maybe finance or whatever, but it was like a sausage factory of teaching people how to dance for their weddings and stuff. And it was it was pretty brutal.
Can I ask
Anybody else?
question? Oh, yeah, just a quick question before I do have to jump off for another class. So circling back to my first question about oracles, I'm now studying with it. I study with a teacher out of Boulder who she often like pulls a card from a tarot deck and one from an oracle deck. And I had never really worked with oracle decks before, but you both had indicated that as avid collectors, you also include oracle decks. How do you work with oracle? Do you do it completely separately from your tarot, or I'd love to hear how you do
that. I'm not a bit, I like oracle decks for the artwork. and I collect them simply because some of them have such stunning, beautiful art. I don't really understand what to do with them. I feel like each one is kind of different. You know what I mean?
Here.
And I'm
Yeah.
such a systems person that I studied the Toth really for a long time. And I studied the Coleman Smith like for a long time. And I read my Rachel Pollack and my stuff, and I've taken all my classes and I've memorized 17,000 decks. And Oracle decks, I don't get them really. I just think they're beautiful. I sometimes what I'll do is like going to the mountains, I'll just bring one that I'm not that familiar with. And because I'm not familiar with it, it gets me out of all of that crap of like, oh, fives are this and fire is this, and this is ruled by Aquarius.
Yeah.
And so it gets you kind of like gets me out of that. But honestly, that's all
I love that because I was feeling kind of childish in a way because the handful that I bought, because they're pretty, because I like the art.
they're so pretty.
Yeah.
And they don't have to stick to some of the like rules and stuff, which I appreciate about them.
Right. And that's one of the things that I both like about them, and sometimes I find challenging about them as well. But something I like to do sometimes, Michaeline, is if I'm doing like a smaller spread, a 3 or a 4 card spread, sometimes I'll pull an Oracle card as a complementary card just to kind of see if it has anything to contribute to the other spread. I have done it before where I've pulled spreads from a multiple number of decks, both tarot and Oracle. But the more I study tarot, the more I feel comfortable in the world of tarot because of the system as well. And it's not to say that Oracle decks don't have a system, but each one is a separate system.
Right. There's usually not a through line across decks.
Right.
Okay.
And sometimes you can use them as meditative tools too. I do that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I add? I'm sorry, I'm like the invisible ghost.
That's okay.
I just wanted to shove it in the conversation. Although I won't show my face again. But yeah, I'm really interested in what you had both to say about Oracle deck, and Michaeline's question I think is very, very interesting. I have a strong opinion about Oracle decks, although they're not very strong in the sense that everyone should be able to explore them. But it's like I've tried a lot of things, and one of the things that is complicated with the Oracle decks in general is they usually don't have bad cards. There is don't have cards that are really exploring the scarier or darker aspect of or human experience.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
like the basic, it's almost like some of my tarot friends just have a very strong opinion about Doreen Virtue, which I don't mind, like the woman who does all these angel cards, and I've seen them used in the context of like mediumship reading, and they allow a lot of people who are not necessarily that might be actually like scared of the stigma that tarot can carry, that allows them to kind of like like own a cartomantic attitude without that have like quote unquote the devil or the death
Mhm.
cards, or card that are just like like triggering for some people. But and so I think Oracle decks are very interesting. They can be limited because of that, but they're very interesting in the context of, or it's something that you can use as in complement of a tarot reading, like you're pulling a couple of cards and using those cards, like if you have a spread with like very specific determined position, having maybe a couple of oracle cards added to the spread you have already drawn. And I think that's an interesting way to work with it. But yeah, oracle cards limited in their capacity to connect, I think, and to like tarot is just like opens avenues of meaning, oracle not always. But yeah, just I was interested by the idea of what you said, like both what James and Trish said about the idea of like tarot being a system. I think that Oracle deck have that ability to kind of, make things a lot simpler. And then when you want to try to connect to the card intuitively, working with images that are not necessarily the one of the tarot can allow you to kind of step away from the rigidity of the system that sometimes tarot has. And so Oracle decks have that ability to kind of push you in corners of, just kind of like doing things in a different way. So try them. Try that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I find that the Oracle decks that I like the one that I like the most, like Southern Gothic, or that has, like poisonous cards, and so they do, it does have like a darker side cards, but yeah, I definitely. Well, thanks so much. I have to jump off. Oh, this was great. Thank you, Trish.
This, Michaeline, is an Oracle deck that I really love, that I do think has a very rich system that's connected to a lot of the things in terms of astrology and numerology and hermeticism, different things that we have in the tarot also. But this is not an easy Oracle deck.
I love complicated
It's beautiful, decks. But it definitely has more to it than
I'm so
than Oracle decks that are created just for, beauty.
Thanks. And as you know,
or meditation.
I studied astrology for 30 years. So that really sings to me. Thank you for that. Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah. Jen, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm somebody that only uses the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And they don't use the Oracle cards at all, but that Oracle deck totally made me eat my words. Like, it's so beautiful and like complicated, and it's really, I love it. I don't own it yet, but someday. My friend showed it to me and I was like, I don't like Oracle decks, they're not connected to anything, rah rah rah. And then I start looking at it, I'm like, oh wow, this is really deep. So I highly would recommend that one.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, and it's just, it's also like, I mean, I've always poo-pooed a little bit Oracle decks too. It's like, oh, tarot is so noble, compared to the Dark Virtue. But for that, played around with the Dark Virtue stuff, I thought it was so funny, like, because okay, I'm gonna say this. Don't try this at home, but one day you have to do this. Try to give yourself a reading with Doreen Virtue cards and Card Against Humanity. This is the best stuff I've ever tried. Obviously, it was not for anyone. It was just for me and my friends. Oh my God,
Cards Against Humanity is a great idea.
I know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
So do I.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Card Against Humanity. I mean, like the whole point of cartomancy is that the cards are being used in different outside of the game. So like technically, you can use any card you want. Like the Loteria cards, or like Card Against Humanity, or like Magic the Gathering. I've never tried giving myself a Magic the Gathering reading, but I'm sure it will be super fun. I remember teaching some kids one, and they were super into Pokemon, and so this girl gave us a reading with her Pokemon cards, and it was fucking mind-blowing, because it was
I love that.
good. Yeah, it was
whatever the gateway is, and if you know those characters inside and out, their strengths and weaknesses and whatever else, I don't know anything about Pokemon, then I mean that's as valid as anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, and Liz, I see your hand is raised, so I'm not ignoring you, but I do want to respond to what Letty just said, because I think that's hilarious. I was about to say, one of the projects that I've been meaning to do is go out to my garage and dig down into my Star Wars bubblegum cards from the 1970s, because when I was a kid, when the first Star Wars movie came out, but I was obsessed, and it was that which got me into this business in the first place. Really, my obsession was Star Wars, and I bought every fan magazine and every comic book and action figure I could. Actually, I shoplifted a lot of them, but I don't do that anymore. But the but I have all the first series of first, second, and third series of bubblegum cards, I think, and I've been meaning to go back out there and kind of like pull my tarot. I want to pull a 78 card deck out of that.
That would be awesome. If you do that, I'll go
yeah,
find my
so-
old Garbage Pail Kids, because that's what I was into, and make a tarot deck out of those. Yeah.
Right on,
Is
right
there
on.
one already? Like they did it so because I love the Garbage Pail Kids. It's so many.
Same. That was some demented. Yeah, it was great.
Right? That was like Patrick
should let
Valenza
Liz
before
talk.
there was
Shouldn't we let
Patrick
Liz
Valenza.
talk?
Yes, Liz.
Oh, no. I lost you guys for a second there, and then when I came back, it was Garbage Pail Kids, and I'm like, oh yes.
You're welcome, everyone.
So I don't really know how to phrase questions usually. So true to form, I'm just going to put out there that Trish, from what I've seen, you have a love of color, and I also have a love of color. And
Pay for color.
as some of the folks around here know, I've been working for way too long on a way too complicated tarot deck of my own.
Oh,
And,
congratulations.
thank you. Among the many things that I'm wanting to do is, colors associated with each one of the numbers. So instead of doing an unlimited palette using, red with all of the 9 cards and, kind of work your way with the chakras and all sorts of fun stuff.
Love that. That's awesome.
So, having just traveled to see some things in Italy and seen the very limited palette that they used in some of the frescoes and talking with pigment makers, talking about what was available in the region, I was just like, oh crud, some parts of me just want to throw out all the colors I've ever used and just like somehow con myself into just like very, very limited palettes. But I thought maybe I could ask you if you have any resources that you might be able to point me in the direction of for someone who's been studying and obsessing about, the sources of pigments and the meanings behind the journeys that people took to gain them through art history and all that, along with just the playfulness of what you've done in things I've seen with fabulous colors.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I think we're in general really afraid of color. And I think we're afraid of it for the same reason we're afraid of like cutting our hair or wearing a certain outfit, because things go in and out of style and being bold and like people not liking it. Nothing is to everybody's taste. And so then we get weird and we try to do the thing that's going to please the most number of people, or we try to be tasteful, and
Nah.
right. I think like this isn't the time for being tasteful. This is the time for like you put your heart and soul into this deck, and you should use whatever fucking colors you want to use that you like.
Oh,
And I mean,
boy.
there are times when I like have looked at some of the shit I wore, in years past, and it's out of date or whatever. But if I really truly loved the colors, I still love it. Whereas if I wore it because hot pink was in fashion that year, I don't, And I mean, it's very hard to separate because we're such creatures of like what is going on around us, and we're so tuned into sort of what's acceptable right now or what's cool right now. But it's hard to know what's like authentically our opinion versus what's being sort of fed to us. But I think like use as much color as you can, man. There are a couple of the decks that I listed at the beginning, including the Tarot of the Abyss and Dust to Onyx, are like very, very monochromy decks. And I love those too, because they are so like expressive in other ways. But for the most part, a deck with a limited palette to me is like a deal killer. Just for me, because my deck, like color to me is so crucial in reading and in just like the emotional impact. It's like a smell. It short circuits all of your overthinking and intellectual shit and goes straight to your emotions or straight to your intuition or whatever. So I don't know. I think you should use all the colors you like, and I wouldn't try to have like a curated palette, but that's just me.
Okay.
I totally agree with Trish. I think that you should follow your heart and do what inspires you with your deck. And I just want to say, if Frankie Albano had limited his color palette, we would not have the albino weight tarot deck, which is beautiful, bold colors. Regardless of how you respond to it in terms of reading or whatever, you cannot deny that he had fun pulling this.
And when I
deck
drew a card
together.
for you just now, I got the Ace of Cups.
Uh,
Look at that. And I feel like that's telling you, like, bitch, go with your heart. You know what to do.
all right. I'll do some color studies tonight. That'll be super fun for me.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I just pulled the 10 of Cups.
Oh, good gravy. That's ridiculous.
Literal rainbow.
All right. Well, one of the plans is that quarterly I'm supposed to report in, with my friends here in the group and show y'all how I've progressed. So that is my aim. For the next time we get together, I will have some stuff, some new stuff with color that will be, following up on this. Thank you.
I love that. Do you have a name for your deck yet so I can look for it?
Well, the concept is tarot as kinetic art, because it's just so fun to move it around. But I might be getting, as usual, a little more complicated than is helpful for people finding things. So it may end up being the kinetic art tarot as opposed to the companion deck, which was my plan, because I thought it'd be funny to have a book that was like
the companion deck.
and the deck called, Little Humble Companion. But anyway.
I love it. Okay. Good luck. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Hillary, do you have anything?
I'm muting myself. Hi. In terms of like a question for y'all's decks, so I'm as James knows, but I'm a unit photographer in the film industry. And recently,
Brilliant one.
Awesome. James is my partner in crime. Or has been one. I've been lucky enough to work with James once, and I don't want to work with anyone else ever again. I had a very busy year last year, and it kind of bled into last summer was had an incredible opportunity to travel internationally, work on my first international job, and that was a very challenging project for a lot of reasons. And going into that, when I was kind of making the decision of whether or not to take the job, I was pulling cards fairly often, and I kept getting the Tower card again and again and again. And on top of that, like the card for the month that I was going to be in on that job was also the Tower card when I did my yearly spread. So I was like, okay, so I know that going in, this is going to be a thing, a big
and
thing.
It was.
You've been warned, yeah.
And it was, and then sure enough, at the end of that, like I came home from it, kind of recovered, immediately went on to other projects, and it really felt like I was kind of bumping against that Tower card and not really heeding its message. So then more recently, something happened where the job that I was on went on an unexpected hiatus that is still going on. And then now, of course, with the impending writer strike, everything's kind of very quiet in the industry. And part of me wants to trust that, the cards were saying it's time to kind of like, rebuild, take a little break or a big break. And that this kind of downtime is valuable, but then part of me keeps feeling very strongly that like I must not be doing something that I'm supposed to be doing in order to kind of get back to the kind of pace of living and work that I'm used to. So I'm not quite sure how to frame that best in a question. But I guess, you know, given that I have this kind of downtime, I guess maybe my question would be like, how can I best use this? Like, what is this kind of break away from, you know, my career and the pace of life that I'm used to? How is the best way to utilize that and use it to my best advantage, and like what should I be focusing on? This would be my question.
You want to see what I pulled 2 cards while you were talking, just to the sound of your voice, to let the deck respond to you. And I got the 4 of Swords and the Empress, which I think is really, first of all, is this a beautiful 4 of Swords?
That's a gorgeous 4 of Swords.
Yeah,
I'm very drawn to that deck. I don't have it. And being a photographer, like photo-based decks, I really love. And photo collage can be one of those things that I either love them or I hate them, just based on the thing. But I really like that style a lot.
I'm very sensitive to collage decks and to photo decks. Like, I'm usually allergic to them. This one just, there's something about the way she's treated them that's just great. But anyway, yes. So I feel like what my deck is definitely saying, and I want to hear what James has to say in relation, is like, this is your germination, like, period. And this is, you do need to do that thing where, like, I don't know if you meditate, take some time, turn inward, get some rest, but especially mental, intellectual rest, creative rest. Step back for a second in order to let the shit grow that needs to gestate and needs to germinate, because we all know that resting isn't, I mean, I feel like if COVID taught any of us anything, it's like that slowing down and getting a good night's rest and sort of turning inward for a minute isn't just a luxury. It's like how you then turn around and create or produce or solve problems or show up for work or show up for your friends or show up for your family. And so, like, I think whatever ideas you have, it seems like from this card, there's something you want probably to do, or maybe multiple ideas. And I feel like now it's telling you, forced or voluntary, there's a time, and it's not just to rest in terms of like, oh, that would be fun to lay on a moonbeam for a while. Like, no, it's like, actually, you also can like this Empress has an actual
can be blooming at the same time. Yeah.
And exactly. And like nothing, I mean, that we all know that's why plants go dormant in the winter and whatever. You can't just blossom all the time. You can't go, grow. It's not how things work. You got to contract, you got to expand, you got to contract, you got to expand. And if we can go with the flow, when the world's telling us to contract, get on your moon crescent, take a little breather and let some shit, I don't know, compress and squeeze and figure themselves out in there and build a new baby that you can push out when it's time.
Awesome. A pregnant pause. Yes, I like that.
Pregnant pause.
What did your deck say, James?
So I think this is interesting because there's something that you didn't talk about when you were doing all of that lead up, which is that you'd also been pulling the 8 of Cups quite a bit. Right? So the Tower and the 8 of Cups. So I pulled the 9 of Cups. But if I'm looking at the imagery of this card, so this is hard, okay, because this is a new deck for me, and I when I look at decks like this and I don't quite know how to read it, I fall back on the Waite Smith interpretation. But what I see here in this card is opportunity. You know, you're looking in a mirror, but you're not seeing yourself. You're seeing through that mirror an entirely different world of possibility. And where does that world of possibility lead? First of all, it's framed against a black sky, which in this deck, again, is not night or darkness, it's cosmos. So this is expansive. It's a higher number in the deck too, right? So this is expansive. You look in this mirror and then you see the blue sky against that darkness, and it's spitting out a rainbow. I think that I don't know what it is that you want to do, but I kind of feel like you do, and you're afraid to admit it, or you're afraid to pursue it. And I think maybe this time that you have while you guys are on hiatus, or while you're willing to, maybe with the writer's strike coming up potentially or whatever, maybe you need to acknowledge what it is that you see in that mirror beyond that darkness where you are right now, and pursue it. Like, stop apologizing to yourself or anybody else and just go for it. Even if you don't talk to anybody else about it, this is a mirror. You can just do it for yourself right now. But I think it's important that you take this time. Don't you? There's something you want to do. You don't have to tell us what it is.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, the rainbow itself is significant in that. So yeah, that's it's funny because it's like that's stuff that I'm already kind of doing. So to clarify, I came out fairly recently, or started coming out to people, and that was a really
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it so like I in the past few months, kind of coinciding with all of this time off, I've been trying to make a really conscious effort, like pointed effort to like go on dating apps, which is like not my preferred way of meeting people, but like and seek out queer spaces and stuff like that. So it's still new, and it's still awkward as heck. but yeah, that's nice to have that kind of reassurance, James, from that card and your interpretation of it. So
well, within that context too, and it's interesting with what Trish was saying about expanding and contracting, which is the way of everything, right? That you've got I see that what's inside that mirror, it's contained in this card, but it doesn't have to be contained, and I see this as an expansive image, even though there's that frame around it, and maybe it's because of the rainbow shooting out of it, but I see it as a really as ownership and empowering. So yeah, I think the rainbow is interesting in that context too.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that we could also see that rainbow as coming in. And instead of like a prism refracting all the different wavelengths of light going out, it could be all these wavelengths coming in and being synthesized in this beautiful open sky that is full of potential and possibility. And there's all these separate parts, and maybe you and only you have a glimpse into how they could all come together into something that is so complete and like all encompassing and limitless. Yeah. And maybe not thinking in terms of the rainbow color. I mean, there's a nice gay pride look to that, which I appreciate, but there's also just that refracted thing of like separating everything into its parts versus seeing this big glorious whole. Yeah. And having a glimpse at both how things break down and how things are also this big, glorious, mysterious, perfect thing.
And speaking of glorious, look at that frame.
Yeah, it's quite a ornate.
Celebratory, yeah. It wants to be looked at.
Yeah. Cool. Thank y'all very much.
Well, listen, everybody. This has been really awesome. Trish, thank you for being here with us today and holding space and answering questions and pulling cards. And thanks everybody for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun, Trish.
It was so fun. Thank you guys for having me and making me welcome and geeking out with tarot with me. It's like my favorite thing. So thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. Good luck to everyone with their projects and their careers and their, life journeys, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, James. Congratulations for a flawless event. It was super fun. I'm sorry I was not as involved, but I listened carefully to everything. It was super interesting. And Trish, you're such an interesting person. For you, James. So it was really fantastic to have you both. And thank you everyone who came and hopefully see you very soon. And James, whenever you feel like you want to do that again, let's do it again. It was super fun. Have a
Cool.
good evening,
All
everyone.
right.
Guys, so lovely to meet everyone. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.